going on? So a big shout out to Marvin Gaye. Thank you for that song because we need it. It kind of puts some peacefulness in us, and it's the question of the damn day. What's going on? So welcome everybody here, and you're in the Power Lunch with Network Nova, and let's all take a deep breath. And I know we've been holding this breath for 4 years, and this last week it feels like it has been a stressor. So I'm so glad you're here with us. I know y'all been glued to those results, and they told us to be patient, and they were right. So what we see is that red mirage turn blue. So let's let that breath out. Okay, but before we get started, I always love to introduce my great team. So Robin, Zeph Warner at the controls from Postcards from Virginia. Hey, Robin.
Hey, so I got my screen up here. My favorite sponsor, Calm.
Calm. Oh, good. Oh, that's a good sponsor. And then, of course, we have the fearless and frisky Stair Calhoun doing the controls back there. Hello, Stair.
Welcome, everyone.
All right. All right, so what a week. I know that we're exhausted. Many of us have not been getting sleep. So that's why we wanted to get ready, because that's how we roll, right? We're always looking ahead to see what we need to do next. And that's because we're smart. We're badass. So, I mean, who would know? This last 4 years, a pandemic, and then we had a reckoning with racial justice, Black Lives Matter. And today, what we are seeing is that women of color have delivered for this country, for our democracy. And for that, I mean, this is something that we should all just really make sure that we're going to unpack all about that, and how, I mean, amazing to see Stacey Abrams with Fair Vote, what she did in Virginia, that groundwork, that investment in the grassroots, and then PA Turn It Blue. That's grassroots women, hon. That's what we did, and they're over there working it. So we will see what Pennsylvania delivered. It's because of those grassroots infrastructure. That investment mattered. So everything that you've done, all the people in this room, this is how democracy works, your participation. So let's get started with a little news from Virginia. What's been happening? What's going on here? And what we do know, a couple weeks ago, we talked about the bills, and we finally have the final bills that Ralph Northam signed into law. Robin, if you can put that in the chat for all our Virginia folks, take a look at that. That's from the special session, Elections Matter. And there'll be more to come. We have Marcus Simon here, so he'll be talking about what's happening with Amendment 1. So Robin, we love to start with thank yous also. Can you put up the slide? You should all be proud of this. All right. Let's zero in on this, wonderful people. It's okay, just hit the present. We'll watch it. We'll give you a second. There we go. All right. So congratulations, Virginia. We did it. I know Tuesday night, everybody was texting me saying, what's going on? And from all over the country, because we were so red and I was so worried about Abigail. But what we did is we delivered, and we have our 3 women from Virginia reelected back in the House. Give yourself a hand. How awesome is that? And then Jerry Connolly, Don Beyer, Doug McKeechin, and we also have Bobby Scott, everybody. And the disappointments, Cameron Webb did not make it, Rashid, and also Nick Betts, but they ran great races. I mean, we could be so proud of the groundwork that they made there, but we want to make sure we say thank you. So one action today we'd like you to think about doing when you're just waiting and waiting, send them a thank you note, right? But I have one more thing to tell us. Getting off of Virginia and getting on to history, we made history. We are going to make history with the first female vice president. So let's just celebrate that for a second. Read the book of my life and see it overcoming. Just because the length of your hair ain't long, and they all been criticized for your skin tone. Go and hold your head high, cause you're a pretty woman. Get your own waist back home and keep it moving. Yeah. We're making history. Follow me, girl, be yourself. We have made history. And I want to get right to the show, because that special giggler in there is one of our favorite guests at the Women's Summit that supported us these last 3 years. Neera Tanden, welcome. How are you? Well, we'll get
I'm
to you.
good. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, so hold tight. I'm going to set up the agenda and then
Great.
we're going to get to you. But I'm so glad you're here and we can't wait to unpack with you. So super that you're in the room. So, we still have a lot to do here, and that's why we've invited Matt Royer of Hold the Line, because even if this will fall our way, there's still a lot to do around. It's only going to get a little more tense. So we wanted to hear from Matt. He'll be up first,
Great.
followed by Neera Tanden, CEO and President of Center for American Progress. And then we will shift it over to Virginia again and talk about Amendment 1 with our fabulous delegate, Marcus Simon. Welcome, Marcus. So glad you're here. And there's a lot to talk about for us and, wanting to do elections and so forth, that we'll need to know that process. So let's just get it started. Matt, I'm going to throw it over to you, and from Hold the Line and so much more that I know you do, but we're going to talk about Hold the Line today. So please start us off and get us ready to hold the line.
I'm
Thank
sorry I
you.
need to interrupt because my
Yes.
screen has frozen and I need Robin to take over the spotlighting. My screen.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. It's okay. We'll deal with it.
Gotta love technology these days, but I appreciate that. I'll go ahead and get started here. So thank you so much, Catherine, Stair, and Robin, for inviting me on today. And I know I'm setting up for someone really powerful, so I hope that I can do her justice before I start talking. But yeah, so basically right now, so for those of you who don't know about us already, Hold the Line started, well, here in Virginia started about 3 weeks ago, but this was really a conversation that we started about 2.5 months ago, basically starting with the issues we were seeing with the post office and all of the mail-in ballots that were either getting lost in the mail, the president, not being able to accept the mail-in ballot, saying that it was, saying that they were fraud, or saying that all of the early voting was illegitimate and he was not going to be able to accept that result. So basically, what it started was what are we gaming out here? And we had 3 scenarios. The scenario that obviously ended up playing out, in the one that we know that was going to happen, was neither candidate would get to 270 on election night, and then Trump would go out and say that he won anyway, which is exactly what happened at 2 a.m. on Wednesday morning, I guess you should say. So we basically said, okay, it's time. So over the past few weeks, we had been amassing a lot of folks. We have about 35 organizations that signed on to be a part of our coalition here, from all spectrums of the mostly progressive, but, all Democratic side of politics. And then we also had a few unions signed on, a few chapters of the NAACP, and a few other organizations, citizens groups as well. So basically what our message is just saying we have to count every vote. And then after we count every vote, we have to make sure that those results get certified. Because no matter what we're doing over all of our organizations that we're working with, if we don't certify these results, protect the results that are coming out of this election, all of the issues that we're working on will be for nothing, because it will just go out the window. So we're basically saying, so our initial action was on Wednesday night. And we were out in the courthouse plaza in Arlington. A great lineup of folks. We had, Delegate Elizabeth Guzman, Delegate Lopez, Delegate Ibrahim Samira, and of course, Delegate Joshua Cole, because if there's anyone who knows about counting votes and how critical that is, it is Delegate Cole. And I was really happy that they came out. And then also we had some other folks from local activist groups, including Sunrise Movement, the Virginia Justice Dems, we had Sean Perryman from the Fairfax NAACP. So all of these folks basically showing the spectrum of, this is the coalition that we're bringing together to be like, these are all the people whose voices matter. And while we may be okay here in Virginia, when it comes to these other states that we're still getting, the results. And I got my Arizona shirt on today. So this was my adopted state this cycle. I was very happy with how things are looking there right now. But basically we knew exactly what was going to happen, right? We knew that Trump would go out there, and then on Thursday and Friday and Wednesday and Thursday of this week, Trump supporters showed up to those counting places to make them stop. And that kind of show of force also needs a show of equal nonviolent force coming from the other side, which is basically what we're trying to do here. I know we had people being like, well, why don't you go to those states? Why don't you go down to DC?
Right.
Why don't you drive to Pennsylvania or go down to Georgia? Well, the thing is that why should it be on us to go into someone's backyard and tell them how they should be doing things? We should be here in our own home state, showing solidarity with those folks so that they know that they have support from people who are in a place that is very protected by the votes that they're getting. So here in Northern Virginia, we knew we were going to go blue.
Right.
We knew that we were going to have we weren't going to have an issue with counting votes, but that doesn't change the fact that we also think that everybody in those other states will also need that same kind of protection. So basically, what do we do from here, right? Because that's obviously the question we're asking right now. Well, one, we have been asking folks, I know today's the last day that they can do this, but helping curing ballots in Georgia, North Carolina, Arizona, and Nevada, making sure that if there were any issues with mail-in ballots, that those get resolved. But from here, what we have to do is, one, we have to hold our elected officials accountable, especially Republican state legislatures in places like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, basically anywhere, and also the legislature in Nevada, anywhere where this was very close, to make sure that they don't overturn that decision, or do not, that they do certify those results. Because what most people don't know is that after all the ballots are counted, the ballots still have to go through the state legislatures and be certified. They have to go through the federal government and be certified. Then they have to send their electors. So there are a series of steps that the Trump campaign basically wants us to stop paying attention to. They want us to be, say tonight, if all goes according to plan, Biden comes out and declares victory. They want us to be saying, okay, we're gonna hold off. Like this is it for us. We're not going to pay any more attention. But the thing is, we need to continue to stay engaged, stay vigilant, make sure that things are getting counted, make sure that they're getting certified. And then after that, I think that another thing that we have to focus on, once January 20th, 21st come around, and hopefully President Biden is then sworn into office, we then have to take a look at ourselves and go, where are we at with our elections? Why is this still an issue? Why are we still having people waiting 4 to 5 hours in line, even here in Virginia? Why are we still having people getting turned away at the polls? We have to make sure that we are focusing on election reform, so that we're not having to rely on these outdated systems to decide who's in office. And then also look at things like campaign finance reform, so that we actually have free and fair elections, and that independently wealthy people are not the only people who are able to run for office, and the people who actually represent their districts are the ones who are running. So all of these, I mean, it's a much larger conversation. The immediate is obviously certifying the results, making sure we're getting those going, and making sure that we are making, getting Biden into the White House if he does in fact win. And then after that, we need to be focusing on a huge overhaul of our election infrastructure and everything along those lines, because if we're seeing it right now, it's not working. We're barely hanging on right now. It should not have been this close. We need to be focusing on how are we getting people to the polls? And that is something that I hope to pivot into after this election cycle is finally over. So I really appreciate you giving me the time, and I hope that we can stay engaged here and make sure that we're working on all this stuff coming up.
No, I thank you for being here, because it's exactly what we'll get into in our next guest with Neera, because I think that the big after steps is really strengthening our democracy. So, with that, Matt, thank you for your work with Hold the Line. Stay in touch with what we need to do. I know you're in the Grassroots Coalition. If somebody could put that link in there so people can stay in the coalition, get involved in the coalition, and then hear from you about Hold the Line. If you have a website or anything you want to put in there so people can help in any way, that would be great. So thank you. So I hope you stay in the room with us as
Yeah.
we go over to Neera. So if you can spotlight Neera, thank you, Matt. And Matt has set this up really nicely because I know that at least it feels like, Neera, that we have did something great for our democracy to some degree.
Yeah.
Where we
No, it's
Okay.
really great for a democracy.
Yes, let's just go right into it. I'm not going to say, because we can worry about the Senate, we can worry, but we first have to get to these next stages. So I'm just going to really just hand it right over to you, and we'll just roll with some great conversation. So what's going on?
Joe Biden is on the cusp of winning 306 electoral votes. I think it looks likely he will win. He will take 5 states away from Donald Trump's victory in 2016. He will win Arizona. He will win Georgia. He will win Pennsylvania. He will win Michigan, and he will win Wisconsin. So I have to say to everyone here who has been fighting for 4 years, who started the resistance the day after the election in 2016, and has been fighting to protect our democracy, the number one job of the last 4 years has been to remove Donald Trump from office, to defeat him in this election, and to defeat him handily. And we are doing precisely that. The Biden-Harris campaign had looked at this map. They played in these states. There were states that they moved out of in the last couple of weeks. Florida, they stopped sending resources to. There were places they never sent resources to, like Texas, because they were deeply concerned it would not be realized. They did spend resources to Arizona and Georgia and North Carolina, and North Carolina will close that gap. Biden is not likely to win, but it will end up being by less than a point. So this is a tremendous victory. Is it everything everyone wanted? No, it is not. But I don't know about everyone else, but I haven't slept well in 4 years, and I will be sleeping so much better in the days and weeks to come. We have Donald Trump, will try to undermine the election, and he will make claims of fraud. But I just saw Rush Limbaugh announce that Trump has lost, and that, the machinery of government will go. So I want to celebrate all of us for all the work we have done for 4 years to bring this day about. Now this is the thing about democracy, and this is the thing about this country. We have been fighting for years, if not centuries, about whether this country is going to be for all of us or some of us. And there was no person who greater encapsulated the idea that the country is only for some of us than Donald Trump. But we have to be honest about what happened this election. Donald Trump brought a lot of voters out. Now, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris brought a much bigger coalition out, right? So Joe Biden is likely to win by more than 5 million votes at the end of the day in the popular vote. And we have a very skewed electoral college, but even with that skewed electoral college, Joe Biden is likely to win over 300 electoral college votes, which is a huge victory. We have, for the first time since 1941, 2 Democratic senators from Arizona. Right. Now, I know we would love to have won the Senate, but all's not lost here. We do have 2 Democrats going into the runoff in Georgia, and it is so exciting that we could still, after Tuesday, still take the Senate back, which is something that we all have to work on. So then one thing I would say is the work of democracy is never done. So the most important thing for all of us is that we stay in this fight together. The Senate is actually a much easier proposition in 2022 than it was in 2020. But, we have a lot of work to do. But to put things in a historical perspective, I think of Donald Trump as the greatest authoritarian threat to our democracy since like the 1930s. And that we've seen around the world that the greatest threat to democracy is a reelected populist authoritarian. That is how Hungary is collapsing. That is how Poland is collapsing. Their democracies are withering before our eyes. So the number one job was to defeat Donald Trump.
Yes.
And he likely today will be defeated because we put together a broad coalition of suburban voters, suburban women, African Americans. We have created a coalition between our urban and suburban, suburban parts of the country to actually build a majority. So I am, a little worried. I was a little worried Tuesday night, but I've
Yes.
I've felt better and better and better each and every day. And so, got to be kind of ecstatic that we will have the first woman of color
I know.
vice president. And I just, the first Black woman, the first daughter of an Indian immigrant. This is America's story, and it was a broad and fantastic coalition. Is there work we have to do? There's definitely work we have to do. Do we
No.
still have to fight for our values? We still have to fight for our values. But we,
Right.
we
feel
tried
like,
to fight the monster. Our goal was to defeat the monster, and the monster is dying.
well, and I think the lingering of it, the Trumpism, I want your point of view of that, because I feel right now what isn't happening fast enough is the Republican side standing up and just sort of, calming this down with following the process. So you have Ted Cruz, you have Lindsey Graham coming on shows and really being irresponsible and saying these things to incite. It just feeds into the propaganda, machine. So what do do you think you'll see more Republicans finally start standing up when they feel like the monster is about to fall? And then what do we do like later with those Republicans?
So, this is a conundrum. So I think you'll see a split in the Republican Party. I think you'll see some people like Mitt Romney and others, kind of Ben Sass, both of whom made statements. I wish the statements were stronger, but they're stronger than the other statements. Speak out against this obvious, I hate this obvious BS. Just to say we should all recognize that Trump launched a series of, lawsuits over the last 2 days, and on every issue in which they have tried to stop counting or allege fraud, they have been thrown out. The only case that they had any kind of victory on was just the distance that people can watch voting in Pennsylvania.
Right.
That really wasn't contested. So just rest assured that all of their cases are BS. And the reality of the victory at this point is that it is so significant. It's not going to, these cases are not going to make any difference.
No.
Having said that, here's the weird thing about where we are. Donald Trump, we had essentially a highly polarized race where both sides came out. So Trump was able to mobilize his base more than the 2018 elections. Essentially, this is why Abigail had such a tough race in the end, because a lot of Trump voters came out that didn't come out in 2018. And so he was able to mobilize his base. And from his perspective, he mobilized and brought in a lot of Republicans. Some of the problems we're seeing in the House are because a lot of Republicans came out. But then in suburbs, there were a fair number of Republicans. There were a fair number of people who voted down ballot Republican and voted against Trump.
Right.
So, that is a place where we need to do more work. I'm a very candid person, so I'm just going to be honest with everyone that Joe Biden outperformed the party. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris outperformed the party in a lot of the parts of the country. So
Right.
that means we have a lot of work to do. Like we have a lot of work to do to
Right.
get. And I think that in the possibility with having the presidency is you can build on this. You know,
Right.
people were given scare tactics and BS about how Biden would close the economy and we were socialists. And I think we have an opportunity to demonstrate effectiveness in fighting the virus and build on this success.
Right.
But, you know, we have to be mindful that that's reality and there's a lot of work in front of us. But, you know, the part of this is, you know, we are here to fight and
Right.
build because Donald Trump will be defeated and these cases will be meritless and the country will move on and Joe Biden will start announcing people he can win announcing part of his government and people will move on and Trump doesn't, you know, he may never concede, but it doesn't matter because we are going to have a new president.
Right. I'm sure he's starting a new celebrity show, so we'll have to probably listen to him on TV, unfortunately. And this is one of the next things I like to talk about. And the next steps too is the misinformation and disinformation. So in my opinion, and even listening to Matt and stuff that you've been tweeting about, our democracy is as fragile as we know, the norms, traditions. You have a bully like this that does this. But then those reforms are real and we need to really work on that. And one is, if we don't stop the disinformation and we don't start on the democracy side, the voting, making voting easier, and also campaign finance reform and money out of politics. And I know that my feeling is our party has to start getting behind that strongly. And I think if we can change democracy, if we can change the money, the power, the access to voting, and then this misinformation. And so I'd like to hear your input of how do we start that? How do we make sure we put the pressure there? Are people wanting to do this? Is this something big on the agenda? Because I feel like that's long-term success. That's going to be what we need. We can't
but
do
so
this
this
anymore.
isn't it. This is a downhill fight in the party. So, you know,
Good.
within HR1, so the first bill House Democrats passed was HR1. HR1 is a democracy bill. It has automatic voter registration. It fights gerrymandering. I mean, you know, there's basically not an issue on the democracy side. There's work that we need to do on misinformation. That's not in that bill, but Joe Biden supports strong reform. In fact, he supports reform of Section 230, which would basically make the social media platforms more responsible for the content on them. So, you know, this is why the Senate is so important, because we can't move these bills have already passed the House. They will pass the House again, even with a smaller majority. They will pass the House again. So we need, like, vitally to have a Senate. This is why it is so important that we have these 2 Senate seats up. And
Right.
we're not going to pass these bills unless we get these Senate seats. Now, there's not, you know, not all hope is lost, because we have Democratic governors. They will be they have seats at the table of redistricting. So there is, you know, things get better over the next few years in terms of essentially fighting back against the kind of gerrymandering we see,
Right.
problems with voting. But we should be, you know, just to step back on voting. This year, you know, we had the greatest challenges to voting that we have ever had, in that we have a pandemic. All these states that had never done mail, like Pennsylvania, never done mail, had massive numbers of mail votes. And they are processing the process is working. Like, the system is working. And it's terrible that anyone has to stay in line. But the reality is that as it went, you know, lines got shorter in states. Lines got shorter in Georgia, because they were working out the kinks in the beginning. So, you know, I think there's a lot to do in this space, but not take away from the fact that, you know, we had a high turnout election. We are exactly getting the results when we thought we would get the results. And we are seeing that, you know, we have built coalitions in states we never, it's fantastic. We resurrected the blue wall, hugely important. And that was again done by a combination of higher turnout, African-American voters and a surge of suburban voters. So both of those things coming together. And then, but the amazing part of this is that we have won, we are likely to win Georgia and Arizona. These
That's a
are
big-
basic states to the Republican hegemony. Once you win those states, eventually you will get, usually you win a presidential, then you get some Senate seats. If we are able to start winning in the South, then
Right.
that is a giant shift. Just think of, I'll say one last word. I know I keep going on and on. Several years ago, we have won essentially the entire West, right? Arizona, Colorado, Nevada. These were states that were that were basically Republican leaning a decade ago. They have shifted to, in fact, in all of these states now, you have 2 Democratic senators, Arizona, Colorado, and Nevada. And these are states that used to be really in play. So if you see the sweep of the country, if we can maintain the Midwest and build into the South,
Right.
even the Senate, which is anti-majoritarian and deeply problematic, it is a deeply problematic institution that
Right.
is so anti-majoritarian, but the anti-majoritarian nature is on its last legs as long as we have leaders that can build this coalition, which
Right.
is hold the Midwest and go into the South.
Well, and one of those leaders, Stacey Abrams, which
Mhm.
we've been following for the last 2 years. And I really believe that the one thing I heard the Republicans had done is and why the voter turnout, they registered more voters than we did, let's say. And I think what Stacey, in certain parts,
Mhm,
where they needed them in certain precincts, very targeted. But I think that what Stacey's done to show what it takes for that win, even North Carolina, is to really be there, be the kind of candidate, be present as Democrats with that Democratic promise of what we bring, but registering voters. She did 2 years of work. That is we're seeing the results of that. So I think as Democrats, anywhere you can push, I know we'll be pushing that here, is how can we start that now in Virginia? Because we were slowed down by the pandemic, obviously also. So that was one area that I think
I think the pandemic really hurt in terms of voter registration and
it did.
canvassing. I canvassed in Pennsylvania in the last couple of days, but I know that
Right.
canvassing was really held back a bit. And the most important thing is having those authentic conversations with voters. And so I think that is definitely a challenge, and one hopefully we can build on in actually the next 2 months, because I just need to emphasize to everybody
Yeah.
that kind of the world needs to focus on those 2 Georgia races. They're
Yeah.
both excellent candidates. Warnock is a great candidate against Loeffler. John
Right.
Ossoff did a great job against Dave Perdue. This is this is not an easy state. It's not going to be every message we love. Georgia is a much more moderate state. So, we have to give them the power to have the right message for the state they're in. But these are winnable races.
Yeah. And I think that, well, the funny part is about the polls. And I know I was listening to my podcast talking about the polls. And, we saw these 2 states in Kentucky. We saw Kentucky's race, and we saw Lindsey Graham. And I was telling my team the other day, so we're so motivated by emotional that so many people wanted to spend so much money in there. But what really matters, what I see happening, is the infrastructure we built in Virginia by women was also built in Pennsylvania, in Georgia, in North Carolina. Also, we worked with the women there, and these
North
other
Carolina will be close. I mean, Toronto,
right. But I'm just saying
win.
that that exists. So this is important. So that, I think those investments, but the polls, I think what I'm trying to say is some of that money could have been put in, not in these emotional races, which really we weren't going to turn to Kentucky, but we had other places we can put it. What's your thoughts on that? Really directing that money. Sometimes we just get all caught up. Like everybody wanted to send money to Amy. We're like, no, don't. She already has millions of dollars. Let's send it over here.
Yeah,
to
I
this
think that
little mayor's
look,
race,
the truth is it is a great thing that the Democratic Party and progressives writ large, center left writ large, has built up an infrastructure where we actually, don't rely on large donors so much, because a greater share of our donors are grassroots donors who send in $200 or $300 or $400. it is good for people to be, targeted and practical in that. And, I will say, I think that, there's a lot to be written about how polls were off and,
Interesting.
the errors, et cetera. But, as someone who's hears from a lot of people in the party, there was concern, starting a week out that that the Senate was trending away. And Republicans were mobilizing and Trump was mobilizing, and it was going to be a problem to take the Senate. Like, I heard 4 or 5 days out that the Senate was much more in jeopardy, that Biden was likely to win. People still thought Biden was likely to win, and that's what happened. The Senate
Right.
trended away,
Exactly.
and Biden did win. So, but we need to be strategic, and honestly, here's the challenge for us, and just to be honest about it, right? Our challenge is that in the Senate in particular, we need to win in states that are pretty moderate states, because the Senate structure is so skewed to the right.
Mm-hmm.
And we as liberals have to, I'm a liberal, like, have to give people the freedom to have the right message for where they are.
Right.
Okay. So I was as angry as anyone else on how they stole the Supreme Court seat and what they did with RBG, and like it, but I have to say, I think there is a big debate about whether the kind of discussion of court packing was helpful or harmful. In Jamie Harrison's race, I think it was not helpful.
Right.
So, and maybe that was a race. He's a great candidate. We weren't
Great
ever going to get a better candidate. South Carolina is just
Right.
a really tough state. And it was, I thought that was always going to, it's always going to be hard.
Be hard. He was great.
He's a great candidate, but also, like, I also recognize that South Carolina is a place
Right.
that is a place you have to build over a long term, and you're not going to build if you don't contest races. So, there's no easy answer here. I just think
No.
we progressives have to give people the space. We have to invest in the right places, invest for the long term, and then also give space to people to run races they need to run where they are.
That's awesome. And with that, we will wrap it up, because I know we have Marcus here and we have a lot to unpack. But I think the wonky people with the polls will be a lot of fun later, when we can lay in bed and just relax and think about it. So, So
I just want to say thank you to everybody for everything you've been doing for 4 years to save our country, and we're going to still do over the next several years to keep to build on the progress and make sure that we never have to face this again.
You're so right. So we hope that you will come back again.
Of
Our
course.
Women's Summit will be again in June. We already have our dates set, so we will be in. We definitely will talk to you before then. But we hope you stay in the room. But I know if not, you may have to go on a show. But
I have
thank
to
you
go.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, friend. See you later.
Thank you.
And thank you. So after that unpacking, Lisa, can you, before we flip it to Marcus, can you just give us a little breath? Unmute yourself, my friend.
All right. Can you hear me now? There we go. All right. So Robin and Catherine thought that you might need a breath, and I lead breath stuff in what I do with NIA and neuromuscular integrative activity. So I'm sure you heard Rachel Maddow talking about the square breath, but I'm going to give you another one. It's up and down the spine. So if you want to turn off your camera or whatever, it's fine. But also it's about going up and down the spine, starting with the belly, the rib cage, and the head, right? So inhale, belly, rib cage, and head, and then go down, reverse it. Instead of exhaling belly, rib cage, chest, you reverse it. Head, rib cage, belly. So just breathing in, belly, rib cage, and head, rib cage, belly. So inflate the belly, feel the ribs rise, come in through the nose, and then go out through the nose or mouth, down through the rib cage, flatten the belly. Breathe in, up the spine, and then reverse it down the spine. Also, a good thing to do when you're stressed is shake out. So I always say to my students, shake out, shake up, shake off. So you can use it in many ways. You can shake up to get your energy going. You can shake out to send it out away from you, or you can shake off and let go, right? So shake your head and release your jaw, space between your teeth. Shake your hands, shake your arms, shake your whole body, right? And Christiane Northrup, if you know her, she says the one thing she wishes she could teach to her people is shaking, right? So it's good for everything. And then head, like, you know, when you go and you have a massage and the person at the end pulls your head off your, you know, your skull off your spine. And that helps with the whole idea of lengthening your spine, because as we sit at the computer and as we sit staring at the TV, your spine compresses. So you want to feel like you're doing your own end of your massage and pulling your head up, right? Lengthening your rib cage off of your hips and giving space between your vertebrae. Now, take your arms up, lengthen your spine, and then drip your elbows back. Arms up, lengthen your spine, drip your elbows back. Breathe in, breathe out. Just two more things. We're going to ground. So what I'm doing is lifting my heels and lowering them, and I'm putting my hands down on the ground. So whenever you feel like, it's crazy, craziness is going on, ground yourself to the earth. You can also ground yourself by patting your tummy, right? So hara, heart, head, right? So what you feel, what you know for sure in your physical self, what you emote, what you feel in your emotions, and then your mental body. So checking in with how you feel physically. Take a deep breath into that belly and just give yourself a feeling, you know, just be aware of how you're feeling, you know, tight, hot, cold, whatever it is, you're just being able to get into the feeling of how you are on a physical level. And then touch your heart, how the emotions are doing, right? They're way up there, wow, crazy. They're way low, they're depressed, right? So just ask, just bring yourself into that message place of saying, I want it to be on an equal, I want to be back in equilibrium. And breathe into that, and then head, right? Head, mental body can be all over the place, monkey mind, a million messages. You want to just take a breath into it, focus on it, calm it down. And the last thing is Tai Chi rub. This is a good one to bring yourself back into focus of you. Energy body is in your hands, physicality. So you're bringing the heat and friction to yourself in whatever way you need it. And then you're sending it out with your last breath.
Nice.
Thanks, everyone. Hope
Howard,
you're stressed.
postcard champion and writer. How many did we write this, Virginia? Give us the total.
463,000, I think. Yeah.
I know a lot of people in here need their fingers to just be relaxed.
Yeah.
All right, Marcus, are you asleep, Marcus? Did we put you asleep or are you here?
I'm here.
I hope you're relaxed because I'm sure you're, yeah.
It won't take much, given the lack of sleep that I've had lately, staying up all night watching returns.
Well, you have the spotlight, my friend. I know people in this room have this amendment was always the topic of discussion this past couple of years. So let it roll. Tell us, what are the next steps about this working well for everybody in Virginia?
Well, I mean, it's happening now, right? The voters made their intentions clear. So we've known all along it creates a pretty tight timeline to get things done. So the first step for us is going to be the first. There's a series of deadlines. Some of which are coming up right away. First thing we have to do is we have to get back together in Richmond on Monday. We have to adopt the amendments to the budget that the governor proposed. I think the link that you guys sent out earlier probably has a lot of the bills that were signed. Some bills were amended. And one of the things that is amended is the governor's budget. One of the things the governor did through his budget was essentially tag on enabling legislation for the constitutional amendment. And It's mostly what we had sort of gotten through the regular process last year, and with a few enhancements that we were able to negotiate with the governor's office and the Senate. So, one of the issues that was raised by those of us that were opposed to the amendment was the lack of assurances that people of color and minority communities would have a seat at the table and be included. So we got language included in the selection criteria. That was one of the other big concerns was the selection criteria for the citizen commissioners, right? That it could be potentially a bunch of politicians, 8 delegates, and 8 of their best friends and lobbyists and campaign managers and so forth. So we have established criteria for who can be citizen members. So if you run for office, if you've held elective office, if you've been a campaign manager, if you've served on the state central committee, you can't be a member of this commission. We're trying to work it so that really are truly citizen commissioners and not just other political types. In selecting that from that group of now we've narrowed the number of people who are actually qualified to do it. We've required the selection committee, which is going to be a group of retired judges, to ensure, we had language before that said consider, but to actually ensure that the membership is representative of the racial, geographic, language minority, and gender diversity of the whole Commonwealth, right? So it is going to be, we're going to have some requirements that the selection committee do their very best to ensure that everybody in the Commonwealth is represented in the citizens that are picked, that the citizens that are picked aren't overtly political. But at the same time, we kind of need to know their political backgrounds, right? This is the tricky part, because the idea was that the citizens should be half Democrats and half Republicans, but we don't want political hacks, right? So that's the balance that we try to achieve with that. So the first deadline is November 15th. November 15th, Judge Lemons, the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, has to provide the Speaker and the Majority Leader and the Minority Leaders of both houses with a list of 10 retired circuit court judges who indicated a willingness to serve on the selection committee. The leaders, the Speaker, the House, everybody, all these, the appointing authorities, I'll call them to shorten it up, they have to pick a circuit court judge by the 20th of November. So we're getting there. And then those 4 judges that are selected have to get together and they have to elect a 5th judge to be the selection committee. Then on December 1st, the Speaker and the Minority Leader, the appointing authorities have to pick 2 legislative members each. So the Speaker gets 2, Minority Leader gets 2, President Pro Tem of the Senate gets 2, and the Senate Minority Leader gets 2. They can't appoint themselves. So that's language we got into the enabling legislation to avoid self-appointment.
That's
And
good.
they are supposed to endeavor to pick people that reflect the diversity of the Commonwealth. So because they only get to pick 2, we sort of thought it would be hard to require the appointing authorities to ensure. How do you ensure the diversity with only 2 picks? So, but they're supposed to, we want more than consider. So we got some language to help with that as well. And then December 1st, the application process opens, right? So again, so that we don't just have the political leaders picking whoever they like. There's going to be a selection process. So if any of you all meet the qualifications, if you're not excluded by one of the exclusions I just rattled off, there'll be a website where you can submit an application, where you can provide a resume, and you'll have to provide information about your voting history, your partisan lean, and so forth. And then if you're not excluded, you'll be added to a list of people that will be deemed qualified. That goes up to we have 4 weeks of the application process has to stay open for 4 weeks.
Mhm.
Then 2 days after it closes, the 4 appointing authorities get a list of qualified members, and then they have until January 1st to make their picks. So it's all going to move really quickly. I mean, 1 week at a time. There's a new deadline every 4 to 7 days, except during that open application period for 4 weeks of December. So that's how that process is going to get started. Then the big question is, we're going to rush. It's going to be a hurry up and wait type of situation, because I think we're going to rush through that process and we're going to hurry. And then we're going to have to wait for census data. And because we can't start, I mean, there'll be some public hearings. There's the committee itself, I think, has to meet by the first day of February 2021. So I'll have a meeting and elect a chair at the February 2021 meeting. And then we'll hold some public hearings around the state. virtually. We added language because of the pandemic to make sure it was clear that the redistricting commission can meet virtually. And then we wait for the census data to come in. The census data is already set now with the change in administration. So the Trump Census Bureau had said we're not going to be able to make the March 31st deadline without a great deal of difficulty. And we're not going to give Virginia and New Jersey their information early this year because they don't have time. They just can't get it together that fast. It's going to be hard enough for them to make March 31st. There is some thought that a Biden administration will take over the Census Bureau and may look back and say, you guys didn't really do a very good job of counting people, right? And there's some remedial work that needs to go back and get done.
Well, that'd be
And
great.
so it would be great, but what it does for us is the constitutional amendment says we've got to adopt these new districts, right? So what does
That's
that mean?
true. I'm sorry. I don't want to mess your process up, but that's true.
Right? No, but so there are certainly, as Vivian Watts, who's on the nose, there is a precedent for having to delay the redistricting process and run under our old lines and then run under new lines the next year. So you guys, I mean, I know there's some talk in the chat about voter fatigue. Now we've got rid of Trump and keeping folks engaged and enthusiastic. We may be making a lot of work for you grassroots volunteers if we House of Delegates members have to end up running in back-to-back years because we don't have census data to do the redistricting. So that's sort of the timeline. I know I kind of rambled through it quickly, but if you have questions, I'm happy to talk to folks.
Yeah, if anybody, and I know that Senator Barker's here and Vivian Watts, you're welcome to unmute yourself if you have anything to add. We have some minute. We're kind of getting rid of time, but we definitely have some time if you have something to add to this process. I'm interested for activists, so I can just throw it out there while you guys get ready to talk if you want to, is so we won't really know how to organize ourselves for these primaries. And, for instance, the Women's Summit, let's talk about us. We have it already set for June 19th, I think. So will we see a primary in August?
I think most likely the primaries for the House of Delegates districts will be no earlier than August. Unless, like I said, it's so hard because we don't know. Unless it becomes like very clear very quickly that we will not be doing redistricting at all this year, right? If the Census Bureau says, forget it, you guys aren't going to get numbers until next September,
Right.
or something like that, then we might not want to move back our primaries because we're not going to be redistricting this year. But barring something like that, I think that the plan, and we've done this in 2011 and 2001, is you move at least the House races to a September primary. In 2001, the last time we had statewide offices and House districts up in a redistricting year, we had two primaries. We had a primary for the statewide offices in June, and you had a primary for the General Assembly in August. I think probably we'll end up splitting it the same way. We haven't decided that yet.
Well, Vivian, but
Yeah,
so
I will-
Delegate Watts, please speak and welcome my friend, our delegate here in Fairfax, Virginia, and Annandale. Good to see you.
Hi, back at you. Yeah, just adding these perspectives. One, you definitely would have the House primary in either no earlier than mid-August, somewhere to mid-September. Why? Because it's regarded that if you had it any faster, it would be an inside baseball for incumbents because we would be supposedly know something about our districts that a challenger would not. So that's why you have the definition of the districts well in advance of the actual primary, but it makes the primary that much more important. And then the other perspective that I would offer, I just don't see with the election outcome for president that the census data would in fact be delayed. So I don't anticipate the scenario that happened way back when I first got elected, where I had to run 3 years in a row, because then the only reason why I ran in the old, or actually they were new districts, but the courts threw them out. And therefore the next year we had to run in a single member district rather than the multi-member districts. And then the Senate didn't want to give us a free shot, so we had to run again. So there was a specific court action that triggered that 2 elections in a row. It would have to be of that magnitude for us to go against the constitutional provision that says you will redistrict every decade. So as I read the Constitution, we would still have to, the House would still have to run based on some sort of change districts based on our best data. And I just don't see under a Biden administration that we wouldn't get a data that
Right.
we need to have.
No, wonderful. Well, I think that this has been great to have you guys talk about this because, you know, finally something feels settled, but it's still some things to settle. So I know that in the chat, we see that already people are requesting an application. Good for us that we'll have some, you know, that going out there. So with that wrap up, I'd like to thank you, Marcus, for your time. You're always so informative. You always bring it. Last week, you actually did your homework on the trick or treat of elections, and I love the conversation you brought. So I love when people bring it. And the same to you, Vivian. It's always informative. You have so much to always tell us. Obviously, you have a lot of information. So thank you for being here. And for everybody else, I know Virginia Smith is in the room. We also have Senator Barker that was here and all the great activists that have been working so hard. I'm going to give it over to my buddy Stair. She has some great words to say. Stick around for her. And then we're going to also do some music and then conversation like we like to do.
Thank you all. Thank you to all of our guests. This was really wonderful. And I've taken this with me from my yoga, and that is that when we get ready for another hard endeavor, which we seem to be going on every day, that we remember, and there's a little poem that we say that translates as to, may our work bring us brilliance as we work together with strength and as we work together and protect one another. But must we always remember that we must get along. So with that, let's all get along and let's work through this together. So thank you all.
Nice, thank you, Stair. I love that.
I'm sorry, there was one more thing I wanted to say, and that is, if you didn't get any pink panties, put your email, your snail mail in the chat. Someone asked me immediately when they jumped into the meeting if we would be having our spin. So, okay, bye all.
Well, today we decided that it was a day that we weren't going to play our spin. But if you still want a pair of the grab them by the ballots pink voting panties, who wore their panties on voting day? Yes, of course. And I wore them over my pants, and I tried to give them out to everybody at the polling station. The Republicans wouldn't take them. There's no sense of humor. What can I say? So with that, I'm glad you're here. It's such a great program. We will be in the room next Friday. We were going to go to one Friday, the first Friday every month after the election, but we really want to stay in the room with you guys and maybe do hopefully by next week, we'll do another show, another power lunch. And then I think through the holidays, we'll do the first Friday of every month, but we'll talk about that later. For now, let's do some dance into what's going on and dance out of the room and just breathe, 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 breathe. We got this. We got this.
There's too many of you to cry.